look pretty good. Yeah, most of them are solid.
So we decided to open up the shop right here, thinking it would be the best spot for business.
We need to understand the full scope of the situation before we make any decisions.
You can't just expect me to follow orders blindly. This isn't a request, it's a direct command. You know the stakes.
The morning broke with the weight of sorrow, the kind that clung to the air long before the sun could chase it away. Diep rose early, her daughter still sleeping soundly beside her on the straw mat. The world outside stirred with life. Vendors calling, bicycles creaking, the faint crow of a distant rooster. But for her, each day began not with hope, but with a heavy reminder of what she had lost. She carried baskets filled with freshly gathered vegetables, her back aching, her spirit even heavier. As she walked the narrow dirt path toward the market, she held her daughter's tiny hand, the child's innocence shielding her, if only for a while, from the bitterness that haunted her. It was on that path that fate placed a stranger in her way. Lytudiep appeared, a young woman with weary eyes that told a story of hardship equal to her own. She noticed Diep struggling with her baskets and without hesitation stepped forward. "Let me help you," she offered softly, her hands already reaching for the load. Surprised, Diep tried to refuse, but the stranger's persistence was kind. Together they walked, sharing the weight not just of vegetables, but of unspoken grief. Their journey soon met an obstacle. A man lay sprawled across the road, the stench of alcohol clinging to him like rot. His eyes flickered open as the women approached. "Money," he slurred, stretching out a hand. "Pay me or you don't pass." Diep froze, clutching her daughter protectively. But Lytudiep stepped forward, her voice steady. "Move, we have nothing for you." When he refused, she shoved him aside, her strength surprising for her small frame. The path cleared, they pressed on, leaving the man's curses behind them. Shaken but safe, Diep found her voice. She shared the story she had carried for years, the tale of how her husband's family had cast her aside, branding her useless because she could not give them a son. Her eyes glistened as she spoke, the humiliation still fresh, the wound still open. Lytudiep listened, her expression darkening with recognition. "They threw me out too," she whispered. "My husband, he was locked away too young when we married. When he came back, his mother said I ruined him. She told me to leave. She said I brought only shame." The two women, strangers moments ago, now felt bound by shared exile. They were sisters in suffering, each carrying scars carved by the cruelty of others. For the first time in years, Diep felt seen. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "We are alike then, both cast away." The market was no sanctuary. Diep moved from stall to stall, seeking work, but met only rejection. At one workshop, a woman looked her up and down, sneered, and waved her away with words sharper than knives. At another, she was grudgingly taken in, tasked with backbreaking labor. pushing heavy loads, lifting crates meant for stronger arms. Each command barked at her, stripped her of dignity, but she endured because survival left no choice. Far from her struggles, another story unfolded. James, her former husband, now CEO, walked confidently through his timber warehouse. He surveyed stacks of wood, noting missing shipments, his mind a calculating storm of profit and loss. Lower the prices, he instructed his managers. Keep the clients loyal. We'll make it back in exports. His voice carried no trace of the man who once promised deep love and protection. To him, business was war, and he wielded his pen like a blade. Later, he inspected the warehouses of produce. Green pomelos stacked high, taro piled in neat rows. He saw opportunity everywhere, expansion in every corner. Next year, he told his team, we build bigger, stronger. This company will rise. His words drew nods of respect, yet behind his confidence lingered the shadows of choices made, the family left behind. Meanwhile, Diep bent under the weight of another crate, her palms raw, her back screaming. She thought of James sometimes, of the life she had once shared with him. But that man was no longer hers, if he ever truly had been. Her world now was sweat and rejection, whispered prayers and her daughter's laughter, the only light piercing the darkness. One evening, as she trudged home, word spread through the village. Police had returned a precious Joe once believed stolen. At her ex-husband's home, relief filled the air as Pao and his parents celebrated its return. Yet the relief curdled quickly into bitterness as they cast suspicion, once more, upon Diep. She took it, the mother-in-law spat. She has always been a thief at heart, but the truth was a blade waiting to cut. The officers revealed the real culprit, Lin Jia, the woman Pao had embraced after casting Diep aside. She had pawned the papers, trading the family's future for her own greed. Shock rippled through the house. Pao's face drained of color. His mother, once so certain of Diep's guilt, trembled with shame. The officer's words rang clear. You owe her an apology. She has suffered because of your lies. The revelation struck like lightning. Pao quarreled bitterly with Lin Jia, whose venomous tongue spared no one, not even his mother. The weight of betrayal sickened the old woman until her body faltered, sending her to bed, pale and weak. And when she rose again, regret had etched itself into every line of her face. We must find her, she whispered. We must beg forgiveness. Together, Pao and his mother searched. They knocked on doors, asked in markets, but met only scorn. Villagers who had witnessed their cruelty spat words back at them, condemning them for the injustice they had wrought. You drove her out, they said, and now you ask where she is? Each rejection was another lash of guilt, another reminder of the life they had shattered. Finally, after weary days of searching, they found her. By the roadside, beneath the weary shade of a tree, Diep stood selling loaves of bread. Her hands were rough, her clothes worn, but her back was straight, her eyes steady. The sight of her broke Pao's heart into pieces too jagged to mend, for here she was, surviving without them, a woman cast aside who refused to bow to despair. And in that moment, beneath the hum of passing bicycles and the scent of warm bread, the past collided with the present. The family who had destroyed her now stood before her, heavy with guilt, desperate for forgiveness. Whether she would grant it, or whether her silence would speak louder, remained to be seen. The air around the bread stall grew heavy when Pao and his mother approached. Villagers slowed their steps, sensing a reckoning, their eyes drawn to the woman who had been cast into exile and the family who had condemned her. Diep looked up from arranging loaves, her expression calm yet distant. For a heartbeat, she did not recognize them, or perhaps she chose not to. Her mother-in-law was the first to speak, her voice trembling. Diep, my child, we were wrong. The words hung in the air like smoke, uncertain, insincere. The old woman's hands shook as she reached out, but Diep did not move. The silence stretched, filled only by the cry of a street vendor and the clatter of a passing cart. At last, Diep replied, her voice steady but cold. "You called me barren. You called me a thief. You threw me into the streets with my daughter, and now you call me child?" Pao stepped forward, his face pale with shame. "It was Lin Jia," he confessed. "She was the one who stole, the one who lied. We blamed you for what you never did. I let you suffer." His voice cracked, but Diep's eyes remained unflinching. "You let me suffer because it was easier than facing the truth," she said. "You watched as your mother's words tore me apart. You did nothing." Her daughter peeked out from behind her, small hands clutching the hem of her dress. The child's wide eyes flickered between the familiar faces of blood kin and the mother who had never faltered. In that gaze was innocence, but also confusion. Why did the people who once cursed her mother now beg forgiveness? The mother-in-law's knees buckled, and she sank onto the dirt, clutching Diep's skirt. "Forgive me," she whispered. "Age has made me cruel. Pride made me blind. I see now what I destroyed." The villagers watching murmured among themselves. Some pitied her, others scoffed at the sight of an elder brought low by her own sins. Diep's chest rose and fell with a tide of emotions. Part of her longed to unleash every wound, to shout the years of pain into the sky. Another part, quieter, weary, longed only for peace. "You cannot undo what was done," she said. "Your words have scars, deeper than flesh. You broke more than trust. You broke my spirit." Her voice cracked, but she did not weep. She would not give them that. Pao reached for her hands, his eyes glistening. "I still love you," he said desperately. "Come home. Let us start again. I will fight for you now, truly, I swear it." His plea might have moved her once, in a time before betrayal had hardened her heart. But now, it only deepened the wound. She pulled her hands away. "Home? That place was never my home. It was a prison built of your silence and her cruelty." The crowd thickened, whispers swirling. Some urged Diep to forgive, citing duty, tradition, family. Others shook their heads, saying no woman should return to the chains that nearly broke her. The weight of every voice pressed on her, but in her heart, she knew no one else could choose. Her daughter tugged at her sleeve, whispering softly, "Mama, why are they here?" Diep knelt, brushing her child's hair tenderly, because sometimes people realize too late what they have done. She kissed her daughter's forehead, then rose again, facing those who had wronged her. "You ask for forgiveness, but you gave none when I begged for it. You cast me into the street like trash, and now you call me back only because truth cornered you." Her mother-in-law wept openly now, rocking back and forth, her pride shattered. Pao stood paralyzed, the strength in his shoulders collapsing under the weight of regret. The bread stall, humble and worn, had become a courtroom, with the village as witness and Diep as judge. But vengeance was not in her nature. She had endured hunger, cruelty, exile, yet she had survived. Her strength came not from their approval, but from her own will. "I will not curse you," she said finally, her voice carrying over the murmurs, "but I will not return. I choose my own path, one where my daughter and I can breathe without fear." The words struck like thunder. Pao lowered his head, knowing the verdict was final. His mother sobbed harder, the sound of regret too late to heal what was broken. Diep turned away, her hands steady as she returned to arranging loaves of bread. Each loaf was more than food. It was a symbol of her survival, her independence, her refusal to be defined by their cruelty. As the crowd dispersed, some whispered of her strength, others of the shame that now clung to the once proud family. Diep did not listen. Her world was her daughter, her work, her fragile peace. She had no room for their ghosts. And yet, as the sun dipped low, a part of her heart still ached, not for the man who betrayed her, nor the woman who condemned her, but for the years stolen. the love that might have been if truth had not come too late. The night closed in, lanterns flickering to life. Diep sold her last loaf, gathered her child close, and walked into the darkness. Behind her, Pao and his mother stood like shadows fading into dusk, left with nothing but regret. Ahead of her, though uncertain, was freedom, hard-earned, unyielding, and entirely her own. The next morning broke quietly, the sky painted in soft gray, carrying none of the storm that had raged within hearts the day before. Diep woke early, her daughter nestled against her, and for the first time in many years, she felt a fragile peace in the air. She had spoken her truth. She had refused the chains of the past. Yet as she sat by the small fire, warming water for tea, the ache of old wounds still lingered, sharp and deep. In the village, whispers spread like wildfire. Some called Diep heartless for refusing reconciliation. Others praised her courage for standing tall. The truth lay not in their words, but in the quiet dignity with which she carried herself. She had been cast out, crushed under lies, and yet she stood, not bowed, not broken, but alive. That was her triumph. Meanwhile, Pao and his mother returned to their house, but the walls that once carried their pride now echoed with emptiness. Every corner reminded them of Diep's absence. Every meal tasted of regret. The mother, weakened by guilt, often sat in silence, staring at the doorway as though expecting the daughter-in-law she had driven away to appear with forgiveness on her lips. Pao, restless and hollow, haunted the fields, seeking solace in labor, but finding none. For Diep, the path forward was steep, but it was hers. She expanded her bread stall, turning it into a small livelihood. Each morning, villagers lined up for the loaves she baked before dawn. Her daughter helped, her laughter weaving warmth into the air, softening even the hardest hearts around them. Slowly, the image of the barren thief faded, replaced by that of a woman of resilience, a mother who defied ruin. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Pao came again. He stood at a distance watching her serve customers, his face pale with longing. When she noticed him, her heart stirred with old memories, but she did not falter. He approached cautiously, voice low. "I only want to see if you're well. I will not trouble you again." She met his gaze, steady and unyielding. "I am well," she answered simply. It was the truth, though it carried an ache neither could deny. Their daughter, curious, tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama, is that man family?" The question pierced the air. Diep knelt, brushing the child's hair back gently. "He was once," she said softly, "but now our family is here, with you and me." The girl smiled, satisfied, and ran off to chase fireflies, leaving the adults in silence. Pao lowered his head, tears glistening, then walked away into the dusk, his figure swallowed by shadows. The years moved quietly. The bread stall became a small shop, then a modest bakery, known across the village for the warmth of its bread and the kindness of its owner. Diep never remarried, never sought another love. Her devotion was to her daughter and to the life she had rebuilt from ashes. When her former mother-in-law passed away, villagers whispered again, wondering if Diep would come. And she did. She came not with bitterness, but with flowers, placing them gently by the grave. "I forgive you," she whispered into the soil. "Not for your sake, but for mine. I will not carry your cruelty any longer." With that, she turned and walked away, free at last from the shadow of the past. Pao remained alone, his wealth diminished, his house quiet. Sometimes he would pass by the bakery, glimpsing the woman who had once been his wife, now stronger than ever. He never entered. He knew her life no longer belonged to him. His punishment was not her anger, but her absence, her silence, her refusal to let him share in the light she had found. Diep grew old with grace, her daughter grown and thriving, carrying forward the strength of the mother who had endured. Together they proved that survival could transform into dignity, and that from rejection could rise independence. Her story became a lesson whispered from parent to child in the village. that cruelty bears its cost and resilience carves its own destiny. And so, when the final chapter of her life was written, it was not of a woman broken by betrayal, but of one who refused to bow, who chose her own path even when the world conspired against her. Her legacy was not sorrow, but courage. Her voice, once silenced, had become eternal. In the quiet of her final evenings, Diep often sat by the window with her daughter beside her, watching the lanterns glow across the streets. And as the night deepened, she would whisper a truth she had earned through blood and tears. We were cast out, but we rose, and no one can ever take that from us.